Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we're back. We're live. It's another week of live radio right here on the Kev Baker Show with me, your host, Kev Baker. And this, our Christmas week, right here on TFRlive.com. Now, you know what's coming next. That's right. I'm coming to you live from Smart City, Glasgow in Bonnie, Scotland. We're going out to the great people of Australia. And then we're going all the way back to Alaska, over to Sid and his mum in Norway, and back to Nebraska, even Poland to Pennsylvania. Yes, there you go. The listeners all over the world, and I want to thank you all for joining us again here today for what is going to be one of our Christmas crackers. How can I be so bold in my prediction that this is going to be a great show? Because I've got one of our favourite guests along with me today. His name is Ben Emlyn-Jones. And for anyone who hasn't heard of Ben, he is the man behind the hospital porters against the New World Order. Yes, indeed. We'll get him to tell us a little bit more about that as the show goes on. But he runs a blog. He has a radio show. He's also the author of several books centred around the subject of disclosure. He's got a trilogy on that very subject. You can check all of that out over at his various websites. Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, HPANWO, HPANWO. Covers everything from government cover-ups to UFOs. He's a bit of an expert when it comes to Rendlesham Forest, and I would say most of ufology. He gets into cryptozoology, hidden history. He gets into space. He talks about everything, this guy. That's what makes him one of our favourites. He's here with us. He talks at conferences throughout the UK. Ben, I tell you, man, it's good to have you back. And happy Christmas week. And of course, a very happy, great conjunction to you, sir.
Oh, thanks, Kev. Thank you very much. And a happy Christmas week to you as well. And happy Christmas to everyone listening on TFR. It's really great to be back again, mate. It really is. And as you can see, I've got the conjunction behind me.
I see the conjunction over your shoulder, man.
Saturn.
I do. That's more than you'll see in Glasgow tonight. You know,
Same.
Yeah, ambient light,
mate.
Clouds, rain, mucky weather. Listen, I don't know. I've not even stuck my head outside the door today, so maybe it's a glorious night. I'm not too sure. But yeah, you were out doing a bit of filming earlier on, big man. How did that go?
I did. I'm lucky because unlike you, I live near the edge of a city, a smaller city than Glasgow, and so I managed to get into the countryside. It's a short walk from where I live, and where the skies should be clearer. Except, of course, this is England, and the skies were covered in thick clouds. So I couldn't see a thing, but I still made a good video.
Yes, I must admit I was playing a little part of that before we came live today. But as I was explaining to you, I really hate using other people's content. So I showed about 30 seconds. I showed you out there looking for it. You were singing. You were doing a bit of Christmas singing, man, which was brilliant, you know. But I urge people to check out your YouTube channel. So before we go anywhere, Ben, let people find your YouTube channel. Tell them how they can keep up with everything you do.
Yes, sure. It's Ben the JR Porter is my YouTube channel, along with the HPANWO website. You'll find links to that there. I was singing a song. Yes, I was singing a song to try and put a bit of positive energy into this world, which needs it. Big shout out to JamNoise72 on YouTube as well, who's my friend Jackie, because I was also on a live stream with her earlier today, and we did the same. So we got together with a few other people and we sung a song. We sung "You're the Voice" by John Farnham, which we thought would cheer people up a little bit, because we need it at the moment, Kev, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. The world definitely needs a bit of cheering up at the moment. And, you know, one of the stories that came along in recent times, Ben, and I think we were kind of together when this just started to break the last time we were on. I might be mistaken, but it's still happening. In fact, it's becoming its own kind of phenomenon now. And it's monolithomania. That's where I want us to start today, Ben, because we've not spoken for a few weeks now. I want to get your take on what you've seen unfolding with these crazy monoliths, man.
Well, since we last spoke, Monolithomania has it's spread around the world faster than the COVID-19. I mean, there's actually a database here which you can go and look at them. It's actually called monolithtracker.com, and it has a map here. And at the moment, I think I can't count them, but there must be easily 100 of them all over the world, from just the one that appeared in Utah. Since I last looked at this map, there's one that's appeared in Canada, in Cuba, Bolivia, and China, Iran, New Zealand, and includes in Shetland. Now, if Stuart Hill is watching, he won't like me saying this, but the media reported as being part of Scotland. So Shetland is officially part of Scotland, although I know Stuart doesn't believe that. But it was one appeared outside the North.
Well, hang on now, I have to press you on this, right?
Okay.
I mean, I've known a few Shetlanders, and they've never had anything against being Scottish. Don't get me wrong, they're some of the strangest people I've met on the face of this earth, in good and bad ways, but what's his problem with being Scottish, man?
I don't know. He's written a book called Stolen Isles. His name is Stuart Hill, and he claims that Shetland is not part of Scotland. I mean, whether he's right or wrong, it has a monolith now, so that connects to the rest of the world.
You need to put me in touch with this guy. I like the sound of that, man.
He's an interesting chap, actually. He's a very interesting chap. I actually thought you'd had him on the show. You haven't had him on the show yet?
No, we've got Australia's got a couple, New Zealand, and they've been popping up in South America, Norway.
That's sweet. I think it seems to be rather like when those naked Trump statues started appearing. And do you remember those? And when people started dressing up as a clown, it's like a real life meme that's spreading and going viral. I was saying to someone who alerted me to the presence of one of them, I mean, it'd be very ironic after everything that's happened and the Utah monolith turning out to be man-made. If one of the ones that have appeared since turned out to be made by the aliens. I mean, I haven't heard of that, but I thought that would be extremely ironic if that happened.
We can live in hope, Ben. We can live in hope, right?
Yeah.
So the one in Utah that sparked all of the conversation to begin with, right? It got taken down. I mean, what's your take on where that came from? What was that monolith all about?
Well, so far, unfortunately, since the last time we spoke about this, no information on the original monolith has come to light. There's still no one has confessed, and there's no way of knowing now or finding out really who it was. I know that several people are still trying to track down the original creator of that monolith. But so far, they've drawn a blank, and the actual monolith has been removed. Did we just talk about that on the last show? But someone did go up there and take it down. It wasn't the Bureau of Land Management. It was actually a local man from Moab, Utah, who went up there with a wheelbarrow and removed it. And the reason he did it, he and his friends did it, is he was concerned for the environment. I mean, not for the monolith itself. This is just a piece of metal, but it's been there for 5 years. But he was worried that lots and lots of visitors would damage the environment, the delicate ecology in the desert. Because, when people go in large numbers, inevitably some of them will do things like drop litter. And he was concerned about that, so he removed the monolith.
He removed the monolith, I'm telling you. Yes. Now,
what's happened to it, I don't know. What he's done with the pieces, I'm not sure.
On my rounds, and I was following this story probably a lot more closely than any man should, there was one claim to fame, if we can call it that, take us over here, and it was artists. They take credit for the monolith. Now, I don't know if they really did the monolith or not, right? But this is a group that are called the Most Famous Artist, and it's like a collective of artists online. But here's the thing, right? They were saying, it's okay, we made it, and for the really cheeky price of $45,000, you too can have your own prism-shaped, triangular monolith. Now, Ben, like I say, I'm very, very skeptical as to whether these people were, in fact, the originators of this, the most delicious open-ended mystery of 2020.
Yeah.
Yep.
I predicted this would happen, Kev. That some people are going to come forward and claim credit for this or one of the other monoliths when they haven't really, because of the fame and because of in this case, the fortune they might possibly reap. And indeed, as long as this becomes major news and as long as it becomes a large cultural phenomenon, some people are going to exploit it, and some people will do so dishonestly. I think, unless someone can provide actual evidence that the monolith is their own.
Yeah, I want to see like time-stamped pictures of them out in the desert between 2015 2016 and putting it there, because Google Earth showed us that. I don't know about this My Artist or this mob that have claimed credit, but I do know there was a gentleman came along and he offered to absolutely rubbish the 45,000 price tag, and he was offering a very similar replica for the even cheekier price of it. It was a good bargain, if you ask me. But only $10,000, Ben, to get in on the game, you know.
Deary me.
Hey, there's a grift to be had, man. You know, when these monoliths popped up, there was going to be people out there going to be grifting on the back of it.
Yeah.
But
there's going to be a mass-produced line, Kev, at some point, and they're going to be in shops before you know it.
What do you put the percentage level at for the original story being something important? Now, I'm not saying it's alien, but something that was relevant, and everything that's come after that has been almost like a distraction, almost muddy the waters, drown out the signal with the noise. Is there any part of you that thinks there's something deeper to this? I'm very skeptical, dude. I want there to be. I'd love there to be an alien angle. But what says Ben Emlyn-Jones?
Well, the chances of it being an alien are zero. I mean, the original monolith was very clearly a man-made structure. It was made from metal, which was riveted together and placed in the ground. And they used actual saws.
Now, Ben, I'm going to offer you this. Now, you think of our Voyager probe, right? That we've sent out there. Now, you've got to admit, there's going to be screws and rivets in places on that Voyager probe. So if it lands on an alien planet one day in the future, and there's a bunch of the local inhabitants are doing a podcast, are they going to be right in telling their listeners that it can't be possibly alien or for planet Earth? Because look, they're using rivets and screws like us.
Well, it is remotely possible that the extraterrestrials.
I'm trying to keep it alive, Ben. I'm trying to keep it alive, man.
No, I know what you mean, but I know what you mean. It's like possible. It's remotely possible the extraterrestrials using the same building methods that we're using, but I'm just guessing that, seeing as they come from so far away and have developed independently from the very basic forms of life, and indeed have developed technology that can travel much further in space than we have, that they would somehow come up with something different, something more like the monolith. The real monolith in 2001, A Space Odyssey, which is described as being, you can't even touch it. It absorbs sound, and it's obviously made of some completely different form of matter.
Ben, with the way 2020's been, I think a lot of people were actually expecting, when this monolith story did break, for it to be something more akin to what you're talking about, right? Because we've had like 3 years of soft disclosure. We've had murder hornets, we've had everything going on this year. You name it, we've seen it. And I think when people actually heard about a monolith just miraculously appearing in the desert, it would have been in line with 2020 for it to have been some alien tech, right?
Well, when this first came about, and I think we made this point on the show where we first discussed this, it did somehow fit in perfectly with it was almost like a script writer had put this in. It was almost like poetic. And I actually said, maybe the first thing we should do is, to whoever did this or whatever did this, is simply say, thanks very much. Thank you just for giving us something to wonder at, something to take our minds off everything else that's going on in the world at the moment and think, wow. I mean, that's a real gift. This person has given us a real gift. And so thank you very much, whoever they are. And there's a part of me that's glad the mystery has not been solved.
You're exactly the same as me, man. You are exactly the same as me. I think this story's brilliant for all the reasons you said. If there's ever a time when we've needed something to take our minds off the more serious stuff in the world, a harmless story about monoliths popping up here, there, everywhere. We get a little giggle at some of the people that go all in and they're triangulating the positions and they're coming up with ley lines and asking if there's black goo and woo attached to it. I love it. I love it. The imagination going crazy. And that's why, for me, like you, Ben, I'm glad it's kind of still an open-ended mystery. And we can keep revisiting it from time to time and just get a laugh. Just have a laugh with it,
Who knows? I mean, there could be, we'll find out eventually where it comes from and who made it. We may find out another one might appear, which is even better made, with another mystery behind it. And as I said, it's remotely possible one might turn up that could be alien, and then everyone will go,
we're all going to miss it, right? We're all going to miss it. Yep.
Yeah.
The boys who cried monolith. That's it. I'm telling you, man. So listen, this isn't the big aha disclosure moment that me and you have been waiting for, and I've been commentating on the ongoing disclosure debacle situation for years now. Well, I probably was like you the other day, Ben, when I found the story about the Israeli ex-head of space security talking aliens, talking UFOs, talking bases on Mars, and dare I say it, the Galactic Federation. Talk to us about this one, Ben.
Yes, this is Hamish Shed. Now, he's interesting. He's a professor, and he's very highly qualified. He's also a very senior figure in Israel's Ministry of Defense, and in fact, for 30 years, he's headed the space division. And yes, the USA is not the only nation that has a space force. And I first found out this from the Jerusalem Post. It was going viral everywhere, and he said that UFOs are real, and both Israel and the United States have been dealing with them for many years. Now I decided to look into this because I thought this is absolutely incredible. So I tried to find out the source article, and there was in fact called there was originally the article. I can't remember the actual name of the newspaper, but it's ynet.il is the actual website version of this particular particular outlet, and it's bilingual. It's Hebrew and English. And the original article, which General Hamish Shed did this interview in, is in Hebrew only. And the funny thing is, when I tracked it down, I discovered something very interesting, because the reports are all saying that they're using the word Galactic Federation. Now, that is Star Trek, isn't it? I mean, it's almost a quote from the Star Trek universe. And I thought, it sounds a bit too daft. So because I've tracked the original Hebrew article out, I ran it through a translation program, and the word that came out was actually not Galactic Federation. It was Space Unity. Now, I can't speak Hebrew, so I don't know how accurate that is, but I do wonder if possibly the Galactic Federation thing was slightly embellished by whoever translated it.
I had seen a couple of the professor's colleagues talking about how it should be no surprise to anyone that knows him. He's talking about UFOs and aliens and things. But they were having a bit of a go at the person who had interviewed him. And the Galactic Federation bit didn't come up. But they thought that it had been slightly sensationalized compared to like their personal knowledge of the guy, shall we say. You know?
Yeah, indeed. Also, there's a lady who is the editor of his new book, because he's actually writing a book, which is it's in Hebrew when it first comes out.
That was my first thought then. I thought, okay, the guy's got a book to sell. I mean, he's coming from this position of power. What a selling, what a marketing strategy. But when you dig deeper beneath the surface, there does seem to be more going on, you know?
Yeah, apparently his editor is actually quite annoyed with him for doing this interview. Now, if this was some kind of marketing strategy, that wouldn't happen. It seems to be that there's some kind of conflict going on within the people who are publishing his book. This is several researchers such as Jordan Sather have come out and said, and that means it just means nothing. That means everything General Shed said should be ignored.
Could we really loosely call him a researcher? Like very remotely akin to something that knows how to use Google?
Well, in this case, I think whatever else he's said about anything else, in this case, certainly, I think he's made a mistake, and I think he's denouncing this and rejecting it too quickly.
That's what happens when you put too much bleach up your bum, Jordan.
Oh, but it's like it's something I want to know more about, and I'd love to know why a man in his position, a professor, a senior defense specialist, would say this and make the claims he did, firstly about President Trump knowing about this. And apparently President Trump wanted to tell the American people this, and the aliens themselves told him not to because people weren't ready. And then there's also a secret base on Mars. Now, as weird as that sounds, I've heard this from other areas. This keeps coming up again, the idea that there is a secret space program which has achieved far more than the public space program has. So I do wonder if there's some kind of reality behind this. It's too soon to tell, but I just can't accept that all this is just nonsense. I mean, this guy, I mean, I don't want to put myself down or you down, but, this guy is not some loony. He's not some kind of like person who's really into the paranormal and conspiracies and woo, as you call it, which we are. I mean, let's face it, we are.
I take that as a compliment, Ben. I don't see it as a besmirchment on my character at all. I wear my woo with pride, brother.
Same here, mate. Same here. And but General Shed, of course, is someone who's a so-called respectable person, and like so many other these so-called respectable people, like other astronauts, like Edgar Mitchell, the first British person in space, Helen Sharman. There's the head of MI5, what's his name, John Soares. They're coming out and saying aliens are real now. The skeptics are going to have who don't believe in aliens and think there's no such thing as UFOs are going to have a harder and harder time maintaining their position, because all their previous arguments that this was all boring losers these are all bored losers who had jobs they hated, and you know the usual tropes, the tinfoil hat, the anorak, they're having more and more difficulty fitting that stereotype into the facts.
Yeah. Now, let me throw an extra piece of what I think is interesting woo on top of this. It's very similar. It's coming from the American intelligence community this time. And the New York Post, it's kind of been at the forefront of all of the disclosure, the ongoing disclosure that's happening. And just a couple of hours ago, they published this here. I've not seen it, Ben, so it's not one that I sent you earlier on. But this here, from the NewYorkPost.com, ex-CIA boss John Brennan believes there may be life beyond Earth. Now, I'm only going to read the first two paragraphs, and then I'll get Ben's thoughts on it. It says, the former head of the CIA said recently, it's presumptuous and arrogant to believe that there are no other forms of life than the ones on Earth. Quote, I think some of the phenomenon we're going to be seeing continues to be unexplained and might, in fact, be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something we don't yet understand, and that can involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life. And this was on a podcast, Conversations with Tyler and John Brennan. So he's got a book to sell as well. Full disclosure there, Ben. But John Brennan talking UFOs and aliens. And isn't it interesting? Listen to this again, okay? I think some of the phenomenon we're going to be seeing. That's future tense, Ben. Not what we have seen from ATIP, what we're going to be seeing.
I'm absolutely gobsmacked by this, Kev. I mean, I've not heard about this before. This is breaking news to me.
Yeah, like I went to find the article I'd sent you, and this was the latest news breaking on this topic. It says, quote, it's a bit presumptuous and arrogant for us to believe that there's no other form of life anywhere in the entire universe, Brennan added, and that's according to the transcript of the December 16th podcast. In April, the DoD released a statement confirming 3 unclassified Navy videos from 2004 and 2015, each showing, quote, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And Brennan commented on the videos, calling them, quote, quite eyebrow-raising. And again, quote, you try to ensure that you have as much data as possible in terms of visuals and also different types of maybe technical collection of sensors that you have at the time, he added. I think it's an important thing for analysts to do is not to go into this type of challenge either discounting certain types of possibilities or believing in advance that it's likely X, Y, or Z. You really have to approach it with an open mind, but get as much data as possible and get as much expertise as possible brought to bear. So that's pretty huge, if you ask me.
Extremely, extremely. I mean, this is possibly the most significant person to say this sort of thing. And it's possible he's saying what he's saying because General Eshed has said what he said. And there are close links in terms of defense policy between Israel and the United States. Too close, possibly, some might argue. But the point is that it could be that these are dominoes that are now falling one by one by one, and that John Brennan who is a really incredibly high-level person within the defense establishment. Not only is what he's saying, like he said, he says, first of all, there's life beyond the Earth. Well, that's all John Soares said. John Soares said, oh, there's life. But then he goes on to connect it to the U.S. Navy videos. And then what he says, like you say, uses the future tense, which is very indicating he knows more than he's saying. And also later, further down the article, the second from last paragraph, I think it is, he says, you try to ensure you have as much data as possible in terms of visuals, also different types, and what he's indicating here is there's telemetry, there's radar logs, firing solutions, things like that.
We'll be right There we go. We're back. We're live on this, the first show of the Christmas week, right here on the Kev Baker Show on Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com. Big shout out to Chris and Cherie Gio. Their wedding anniversary today, and they're also going to be going to the Trump Tower. Please follow them over on YouTube and on Twitter if you want to see the latest part of their Matrix mission. Oh, excuse me, if I can call it that. I nearly choked myself there, sorry. Yeah, so you can follow that on Beyond the Veil over on YouTube, or Beyond the Veil on Twitter as well. That's going to be quite a spectacular night. I think they're going to be live streaming from Trump Tower. So check that out, okay? And coming up right after the Kev Baker Show here when I finish, we've got Lockie with Quantum Connections. So we're going to keep you all well entertained and infotained as we march towards the night of the big red fella. Yes, Christmas. It's on the horizon, Ben. I'm getting excited. I am. And it's like Christmas is coming early. Because me and you, we like nothing more than to find in our Christmas stockings a little bit of UFO disclosure conversation. And it's not coming from people like me or you, Ben, whatever people make of us. This is coming from officialdom. Yes, the kind of people who probably know where all the UFOs crashed and where all the alien autopsies took place. John Brennan, he follows up the Israeli ex-head of space defense, and I'm like you, Ben. And when politicians talk, it's always done, it's always timed. And the Trump administration in particular, like many other administrations in America, has a very close bond with the Israeli government and what they're doing. So I think it would be crazy to think that this is just a coincidence that these two high-ranking figures come out at the same time, you know?
It's definitely not. I mean, we often hear about the special relationship, which is the United States and UK. Well, USA, and Israel also have a special relationship, which means they share a lot of intelligence. They support each other in terms of finance and technology and things like this. And indeed, the fact that they regularly have meetings over classified issues, and the fact that two very senior figures from both nations have come out and said what they've said, to me is astonishing. And it's really something that's 10 years ago, Kev, or I think it was when we started doing shows together, which was a few years ago. I don't know if it was 10. I think it was about 5 or 6.
6 years ago now,
6
brother.
years,
Yep.
6 years.
Yep.
I don't think if we had predicted that by 2020 we would have people from senior figures in these governments.
No way.
From at least two separate countries now, or more if you include what Medvedev said in Russia. At least 3 separate countries now saying basically the same thing that we have been saying, people like us have been saying for over 70 years. I would have been, no, that's not possible. But it's happened.
So then we have spoke about this for 6 odd years now. And before we go even further, you mentioned Medvedev there. Kind of remind me what Medvedev has said on this topic, if that's not too much trouble, because that's escaping me right now. And you know me, I'm Kremlin Kev. I like to get the Russian angle out there.
Oh, definitely. Well, Russia is a very, very important player in this issue. Dmitry Medvedev is he's the prime minister. So in that country, that's the second highest person. The president, Vladimir Putin, is like the senior figure in Russian government. Medvedev, though, is his deputy, and he was doing an interview the other day. He was actually the other day. It was a number of years ago now, but when the cameras were supposedly off and he was talking privately with the interviewer, he started talking about UFOs. And he said, for example, that Russia has a UFO policy. It has a UFO contingency plan within its defense department, and that the president himself is involved in that. And along with such high-level information as the codes to the nuclear deterrent, he has the information about UFOs with him. Now, this, again, is something that has been said for time immemorial, actually, by various witnesses coming out and talking about it from within the defense establishment, from within intelligence, within the aviation establishment. And they've been speaking out as individual witnesses at conferences, at press conferences and things like this. What we have now is we have the kind of people who used to deny this and essentially would have refused to comment on what these individuals are saying the same thing. This is an extraordinary development, Kev. It's like in people who say, well, disclosure is not possible. I mean, I do ask them to consider that this kind of development means. I mean, the implications of it, I can't even begin to imagine. John Brennan in particular is someone even in this day and age, this heady time period, all this declassification, would not have predicted would speak on this matter. I'm astonished. I literally, as Dr. Stephen Greer says, gobsmacked.
I love it when I can gobsmack Ben Emlyn-Jones. I can take the level of woo somewhere where even Ben goes, wow.
It's quite an achievement, Kev.
Yeah. So to carry on this kind of subject, we've spoke about the public inception recently of a space force. We've also spoken in the past about the secret space force, not the one Corey Good talks about with the blue chickens, but more Gary McKinnon, the Scottish hacker, what he's seen, non-terrestrial officers, things like that. Well, I don't know about non-terrestrial officers. I did notice this the other day, and we spoke about this with Bill and Travis on Warrior Mode last night. But Ben, did you know that the people in the Space Force, they are to be referred to as the Guardians? Yes, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Have you been following this story, Ben, the latest twist of the Space Force?
Yes, apparently they chose it themselves. There was apparently an opinion poll about what they wanted to be called.
Military doesn't work the same as when I was in. The last thing we got asked was our take on anything. We just got told, you know.
No, I know. I'm old Gene Hackman in that film. He was the submarine captain. We're here to protect democracy, not to practice it.
Exactly. Exactly, brother. Yep.
But it seems they have practicing democracy. It's probably the only part of the United States that is practicing democracy right now, incidentally. But they decided to ask the personnel within the US Space Force what they wanted to be called, and they decided Guardians. And I suppose when you're dealing with something like completely new, well, it's not completely new. As we said, Israel has its own Space Force, as does China and several other countries. But the Americans, this is the first time it's been for Americans. So if there's airmen for the US Air Force, Marines for the US Marine Corps, soldiers, sailors for the Navy, what do you call members of a Space Force? And the answer, they came up with this name Guardian. And I suppose that's, I don't know if there's any kind of occult symbolism in that or anything like that. I don't know, but it's
somebody will find some somewhere, Ben. I just thought it was quite funny because we've now got the Guardians, right? But we've also got that first space nation of Asgardia. So are we going to have the Guardians versus the Asgardians in near-Earth orbit anytime soon?
You know, I don't watch enough TV or something, Kev. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, that's a real thing.
What's Asgardia?
Oh, we've covered it on the show before. The space nation of Asgardia. They've got their own president. They've got their own national anthem. It's a cube satellite. There's bound to be a representative of the Asgardian Council living near you. There's actually a mayor of the Asgardian Council living in Glasgow.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
maybe you should run for that office yourself, maybe, Kev.
Now we've covered this before. We have, but what we'll do is we'll go to their website, just in case there's people out there who haven't heard this. This is their website, the Asgardians. Build the future through democracy and innovations, no matter where you are. There's 1 million actual space citizens, but the people that reside on the satellite. Yeah, you get your own passport and everything, Ben. I know you're thinking, what is this? 1063 now. The head of the nation addressed the parliament. What is Asgardia? The first space nation to, or a unique international community of forward-looking people, a digital state with its own transparent economy, focused on scientific progress on Earth and in space. So what's your thing? What do you think about that while I dig up the Asgardian? They've got a national anthem, dude.
That's really amazing. I mean, I've never heard of this before, but it sounds really quite incredible. And maybe the people who in the Space Force had heard about this and just chose Guardian because of that. I don't know.
I'm liking this. Let's take a listen then to the all stand for the national anthem of Asgardia. You see the crazy looking cult leader? I mean, the leader there. That's like a Russian billionaire guy. Asgardia. And yes, it goes, Asgardia, the pale blue dot hanging in the sky. Homeworld, door to the future, where all the nations finally are one, unifying all humanity. Asgardia. Leave the old problems all behind. Moving on for the better. Living in peace and mutual tolerance. Trying to improve humanity. Asgardia.
You know, I think there may be some more paranoid members of the conspiratorial community who might see this as some kind of George Soros-sponsored secret coven or something. However, from what I've seen here so far, it sounds like a typical internet meme rather like monoliths.
Look at this, dude. It's not an internet meme. Remember Opus Lembic? Do you remember him? Yeah, he's like their representative.
He used to present TV, didn't he?
No, he's like the politician that was married to the one of the cheeky girls, remember?
Yes. Lembit Opik.
That's him, isn't it? Yeah, he's like, there he is there. I'll let you hear him speaking.
Oh, my God.
He's one of their representatives. See, dude, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And we've proved that it's possible.
Yeah, so like I say, you get your own place on a CubeSat, and there's future missions to the moon, to Mars, and beyond. They want to conquer, literally this is part of their doctrine, they want to conquer the universe.
I suppose Lembit Opik had to do something when the Liberal Democrats deselected him. But
there you go, dude, that's where he ended up.
This is something a bit beyond.
That's where he ended up. You see?
He could have done what Lord Kinnock did and become an EU commissioner, but obviously he's chosen something a little bit more worthwhile, and I wish him luck. This to me doesn't sound like some kind of sinister
You need to check out for the next show we do. You have to go down the Asgardia rabbit hole. You have to. Now, you have to know all of the words for the national anthem as well. I insist.
If you join the Asgardian armed forces, I suppose you get called a guardian.
Yeah. Well, hey, hopefully not an Asgardian. I had to go there. Go there.
Very
Come on. Listen, let's shift gears slightly, but no, it's not shifting gears because it's another sign of the times that we live in. And you were informing me about 1984.
Yeah.
The book.
This is a bit.
Talk to us, Ben.
This is a bit more grim than what we've just been talking about.
Laughing and joking aside now, the Asgardians are gone for now.
Yeah, this is actually quite telling, actually, depending on what has been happening lately. But some of you may be familiar with the Amazon Kindle, which is a book reading. It's a device and an app which you can have either on your desktop or you can get a purpose-built handheld reader for reading ebooks. And some people having Amazon Kindle made a disturbing complaint because some of them bought a copy of 1984 by George Orwell, and they switched on their machine one day and suddenly noticed it was absent. Now, the reason for this was simply because the book's copyright holders made Amazon aware of a problem. There were some people who were actually uploading Kindle copies of the novel to their own account and selling them independently, which is of course an obvious breach of copyright. It's obvious theft. So they started deleting these copies, and they closed the account that was perpetrating this theft. But the problem is they ended up deleting all copies of 1984, even the legitimate ones, on every device. And it's actually rather fortuitous, and somehow it's rather apt, because of course 1984 is a book about a future totalitarian state where information is very tightly controlled, and various all kinds of works are actually banned by what's called the Ministry of Truth, which is an ironic name.
That's what I found ironic about your article, the fact that we're basically looking at the disappearing of a book that deals with the censorship of people and things like that. I thought it was quite ironic.
It's incredible, Kev. Of all the books this could happen to, it was 1984 by George Orwell.
Fahrenheit 451 might have been another good one. The Ray Bradbury
if it had been that one as well,
that
would have been equally good. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that people often get these Kindles and they think, well, I'll just get a book on Kindle anywhere else. And I do understand why people do that. It's easy to carry around. It's ever so convenient. But the thing about it is, when it comes to information, important information, we cannot trust a centralized electronic source simply because it can be hacked. I mean, of course, it could be hacked by criminals, but it could also be hacked by the authorities. Now, a lot of authorities try to ban books when they become totalitarian. Funnily enough, the Soviet Union is an obvious example of this, and indeed Nazi Germany. But by far the worst offender is Ireland. Ireland have banned so many books and films during the course of their history, and it's quite a short history too, barely 100 years old, that it really takes your breath away.
Is a lot of this surrounding kind of religious topics, things like that?
It was, yeah. It tended to be something to do with religion. For example, the film The Life of Brian, which is a highly controversial comedy by Monty Python. That's a good example. But there's others, such, for example, the United Arab Emirates banned Animal Farm, another book by Orwell, his earlier book about anthropomorphic farm animals. They just didn't like the idea of pigs acting like humans. It was against Islamic theocracy. Brave New World was banned in Ireland, but that's by Aldous Huxley, who was Orwell's school teacher. And there's so many other examples.
Have you watched that TV show, Ben? Sorry to jump in there, but have you watched the recent Sky adaptation of Brave New World?
I haven't, no. I saw the trailer for it. I thought,
well worth a watch, brother. Yeah, very much. I thought it was quite a good adaptation, very thought-provoking, especially the times we're living in right now, you know. Maybe that's what makes it a bit more profound, watching it with everything going on in the world right now. I don't know, but it's well worth a little checking out, Ben. Definitely.
Definitely. I mean, Brave New World, of course, by Orwell's school teacher, Aldous Huxley, is an incredible story. And if this adaptation brings something new to the story, I'll watch it. But the original book, written in 1930, years ahead of its time, it talks about a future world. It's an outwardly utopian society, but where people are all genetically engineered to fulfill certain roles, and people no longer reproduce sexually. Everyone is genetically engineered in test tubes, which are kind of artificial wombs. But it's interesting, Ian R. Crane did a talk about this, and he mentioned this situation with 1984, and he mentioned the word Kindle actually means firewood. And he thinks that's a bit ironic, because in this case, you don't actually need fire. If you want to get rid of these things, you just need to press a button. Now, in the past, all the book banning attempts in the past failed, because you think about good old-fashioned paper and ink, which all my own books are all only available on good old-fashioned paperbacks. Once they've sold enough copies over a wide enough area, the book becomes effectively indestructible. A censor has to track down every single copy ever bought, lent, or sold, and that is impossible. In fact, when oppressive regimes fall, what often happens is people will come out on the street waving the book and saying, "Hey, I had one of these in my attic all along." Yeah. It's and of course the forbidden fruit factor kicks in as well, the old Streisand effect.